What's happening? This is the first, I guess, real official Generator Live, if you can call it that. So I'm doing all sorts of testing here on the show. I've even got lower thirds so you can know exactly who I am. I'm Matt, if you haven't noticed. This is Generator Live. This is the live portion of the Generator podcast, and I'm bringing back someone tonight that I know you all know. He was on episode 31 last year. Unbelievable artist, photographer, retoucher, musician, educator, dancer, hairstylist, fashionista, I think is what it is. But it is my good friend Nino Batista. How are you, sir?
I think you might have reached a little bit on those last two. Maybe
the fashionista? I don't know, man.
Dancer? I mean, really?
I don't know. I've never seen you dance, but I've got my fantasies. Things are what they are. How are you?
I'm okay, man. I'm here. I'm enjoying my potato camera visual here because I don't see any details about my tired face today. But I'm very happy to be back talking with you today. And actually, it didn't compute until I heard your intro.
Yeah.
That we're broadcasting live, so that's fun.
Yeah.
I did not put two and two together. I thought we were recording this, but awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, this is going to be something that, you get what you get, right? So, as part of what I'm trying to do with Stone Tree and Generator is produce a lot more content that's live. I just want to talk to the audience, right? And the problem that I found is by doing the podcast, you record it offline and then you edit it all down and then you send it out. And there's like this asynchronous long period of time between when you have all the energy from that and then you wind up putting it out and people start to hear it. And there's a disconnect. And I didn't want that. What I wanted was to be doing more things that had a direct connection to the people that just happened to follow me, both of them. And right. I wanted to be able to talk to them over and over and over in a way that felt more like community and less like me versus them, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
One of the things is the live stream, but also email. Right? Because I suck at email. And this is one of the things that I actually wanted to talk to you about because you're so good at it. You're so good at constantly sending out emails about retouching tools and where you're going and what you're doing and your vulnerability. And you put all this stuff out there. Do you find that email is kind of your preferred thing versus social media or doing live content? What do you think?
Well, that opens up an interesting can of worms, as it were, because that question, because I like to communicate clearly, and that's not always everybody's bag, and I understand that. In other words, what has happened is, if you go back 30 years ago, I didn't like to write a letter to anybody, but then over time I became a writer, and I like writing my thoughts out, and I wrote for automotive websites, music websites, and then photography websites and all that. And then, of course, like anyone else, man, I jumped into the social media space, and then text messaging became sort of dominant. And next thing you know, we're DMing all the time, everyone all the time. And I went into that like anyone did. And I'm kind of over it. I'd rather write my thoughts out. I'd rather hear a read a two paragraph email from somebody, and I'll comb it over and I'll look at the situation and I'll reply and I'll write something nice, because I don't know how many times I've sent relatively lengthy, in-depth DMs, and then I get responded with a K or a left on red. And I realize people don't like to communicate, that's a sweeping generalization. It's not everyone, but
that's all this is sweeping generalizations. That's all we're going to do. It's just large sweeping generalization. So,
well, in that case, we're going to open up the topics to religion and politics.
Hey, here we go.
No, we're not. And suddenly someone pulled the plug on a generator.
Right.
No, but I mean, the answer is yes. I'd rather communicate thoroughly and concisely. And I appreciate people who are the same in return, because then there's no ambiguity, right? I'm clear, they're clear, we move forward with whatever we're trying to do, as opposed to a bunch of WYD question mark and all that nonsense. I'd rather communicate for real. So,
I agree. And what you said a second ago about people just don't want to communicate anymore. it's a really strange phenomenon, right? And I've been saying this a lot over the past 2, 3, 4 months, is like the Gen X in me is really starting to come out, right? And I'm not just talking about
Yeah.
the grays and the beard. I'm talking about like it's just I'm getting more and more frustrated with people that can't hold a conversation, give me good customer service, just remain relatively professional in any sort of context, whether that's email or text or DMs or whatnot. And I know things have changed and I'm set in my ways, right? The corporate stuff just runs through my blood. I get that. But I'm like, very simple stuff, very simple details, very things that could be just give a little bit more context. They don't offer it. And when you send out a lot of information, they don't give you much in the way of feedback either. And, it gets me thinking like, what are we doing out here? And I feel like an old man just shaking my fist at the clouds,
Yeah,
get
yeah,
off my
yeah,
lawn. Like,
exactly.
oh God, now I'm just totally irrelevant. But the communication thing is big for me, which is why I like having these types of conversations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think everything you mentioned about from if someone's in a service position, provide me a decent service. I'm paying for it. If someone's communicating a thought or idea, collaboration, give me some thoughts. Read what I write. Give me the. It ought to be distilled down to just giving a shit. And I
Giving a
think
shit.
that's something that's lacking, is that people either don't think they need to, or B, if this is the more empathetic side of me, B, aren't able to. There's a lot of people struggling and suffering out there right now for lots of different reasons, and a lot of people just don't have the bandwidth to give a shit. And somehow or another, I always do. You talk about a service position. Even when I've had retail jobs where I'm like selling computers to random people in a mall years ago, I gave a shit. When I was a sacker and 18 years old in a grocery store, I was the best sacker by and large because for some reason I cared. I didn't think this is my crowning achievement in life, but I took it seriously and I said, I'm helping this person. I need to actually help them. I need to actually care. That's how I'm wired. Does that make me superior to anybody? No. In fact, it probably has caused me more problems than it's worth. But for whatever reason, I care. And when people don't care in return, I notice, for one. And depending on what I'm dealing with and what I'm going through, that notice could turn into, I don't want to say offense, but it could turn into like, okay, thanks for that. I appreciate that. Like a bitterness.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to rail against as I do more of this. I'm trying to rail against the feelings of resentment for people or getting frustrated or,
Yeah.
just letting it bother me because it
Yeah.
just triggers me, right? So I'm trying to be aware that I'm like, all right, I'm being triggered about this. It's not a big deal. It's just not the
Yep.
way you do it, right? So my one of my exes used to say it's different, therefore it's wrong, right? And about, because I would argue with her and I'd
Yeah.
basically say, well, you should do it this way or you should do it that way, and she's like, I'm doing it differently, it doesn't mean it's wrong. And so
Right.
it just became this thing, when I see someone doing something differently and I get triggered by it, I'm like, not necessarily wrong, just not necessarily my style. And when it
Exactly.
comes to communication or providing service or whatnot, I really have to check myself a lot because I can very easily get into this. It's all about me. I'm the main character type of energy. And I really struggle against that sometimes because at the end of the day, it's just not fucking worth it. Like, it's just not worth getting
No.
my blood pressure up. It's not worth it
Mm-mm.
getting frustrated or causing a scene or saying something because I don't know what that person's going through. They could have the worst day of their lives, and then here I come saying you didn't give me the correct change fast enough. Like, fuck off, Matt. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
No,
not
exactly.
about me. It's not about me. So,
Exactly. In fact, I have two examples that I want to tap into exactly what you're talking about. One, going back to the service person, which
yeah,
we all can be the service person. I mean, I am in my role as well, just in a different way. But I think when we say service people, we are thinking about the cashier, we are thinking about the food service person or the delivery person. That's
right.
mostly what we're thinking about. And I walk into like a fast food joint and to pick something up, the first thing I think about is that everyone behind the counter doesn't want to be there. I mean, that's fair. Even if they're in a positive human being with a good boss and a good management situation, they definitely don't want to be making minimum wage,
Right.
serving mostly ungrateful people in the populace, right? So
Uh-huh.
that's a fair assumption. So already I'm empathetic to them. Now, where that interaction goes depends on them, with me. But I start empathetic. I'm like, look, you don't want to be here. I probably shouldn't be here because I shouldn't be eating this shit.
Yeah.
But let's see how we can do this. That's kind of the premise I start in. So if
Yeah.
they're not super cheery and but they still help me out, I'm like, cool, no problem.
Right.
And I give them a little extra warmth, a little extra, hey man, sorry to bug you. Can I get a thanks, man? Appreciate your time. And they're like, what's that guy's deal? Why is he so friendly? But I gave him a little something, what I assume to be a little something of positivity in a sea of nonsense all day long, because I assume they don't want to be there. And that doesn't sound, or rather, it sounds more um, sort of cynical than I actually mean it. I just mean that I'm sympathetic to their role in that position, and I don't assume that, hey, you owe me. Where's my double latte, double vanilla bullshit, half calf nonsense? And you didn't do it right, so I'm gonna throw a Karen tantrum. No, man, that guy doesn't want to be there. He don't want to
You
be
know,
there.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you did grow up and you had a job where you had to give a shit and you did give service, right?
Yeah,
You were taught well, you were trained well, and that's just kind of ingrained in you. And I just don't think it's being taught at management levels anymore. I don't think it's being taught in the schools to be able to train people to have that focus. And I do the same thing. If you've ever had a job in service of any sort, your empathy level for the person on the other side is astronomically high. I was at an event a couple weeks back, and it was an open bar type of event. And everybody loves the open bar, right? We can go up, we can just high end bourbon, absolutely, just knock them back. But I was watching, and I watched a line of people, and no one tipped the bartender, right? Who's sitting there, they're like, free drinks. Great. I'm going to get a mojito. I'm going to get an old fashioned, right? All the stuff. It's not like Jack and Coke, right? So the guy's working and he's working his butt off, and, he's not getting paid the normal way, and it's just dependent on cash tips. So I watch and I'm just like, how you doing tonight, man? He's just like, it's you guys are a rowdy bunch. And I'm like, here's $20. I was just like, here's $20. Thanks for doing what you do and kind of keeping us all lubed up. And he just kind of stood back and was just like, really? And I said, yeah. And it has nothing to do with me and throwing $20 at him. The thing was, I wanted to show him just a little bit of appreciation for the work that he was doing, that he's not unrecognized, that he's not just the dude behind a bar, right?
yeah.
That he's not the means to an end. And I just don't see enough people these days putting themselves in the shoes of the other person in those
Yes.
situations. We're so quick to jump on, this person's doing it wrong, or I don't like their style, or, they're teaching this way. And if I'm confining it to the photography industry, right? If we don't like what we see, then we're very dismissive. But instead, we're not putting ourselves in their shoes. What does their business look like? What
Right.
issues are they having at home? And maybe they're doing this just to make money, or maybe they're doing this because that's all the time they have. I find that compassion is not as prevalent these days as it used to be.
I agree, and I think it's a common. I can only speak, of course, to the United States.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know
yeah,
what's going on in Beijing, but I mean, here in the U.S., we do have a lot of tension, a lot of stress, and a lot of difficulty that people are going through, from financial to just social anxiety, kind of things. And I swore I wasn't going to go into religion and politics, but there's a lot of people who are rightfully stressed out about the social political situation here. So, point is, there is a noticeable and measurable spike in anxiety and stress and tension and people struggling. So that's part of it. However, it doesn't mean that because you're struggling, fuck everyone else. At least it shouldn't mean that. And
right.
it definitely shouldn't mean that consistently, daily. If you can't even be a human to somebody ever because you're struggling, that is a severe lack of emotional restraint. And I get that we have bad days, but some people have a bad day every day. And I think that's where I have a problem with it. Not the one meltdown. I think I
Right.
have a problem with the people who are consistently this way. That's where
And
I'm kind of railing against.
and it's I find it sad, right? I don't look at people like that and get upset. I just kind of be like, wow, you choose to feel this way all the time. Okay, all right, this is where you choose to put your energy, and that's fine. Not where I'm planning to do it, but again, just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong, right? So it's been a really weird time,
Mm.
and to keep on our politics and religion rants, when I was when I was working for Cisco and Cisco Systems, the computer company, and
Yeah.
I was working for a guy named John Chambers. John Chambers really was one of the best CEOs I've ever worked for. He came up through Wang Computers in Massachusetts, and just a really well trained, incredibly smart CEO. Everybody loved
Cool.
working for him, right? So one of his things was, people would always ask him, are you Democrat? Are you Republican? He's like, I'm a capitalist, and everybody's money is green. And he donated the same to the Democrats as he did to the Republicans. But this is a guy that's meeting with crown princes and heads of state. And, for him to choose a side where his equipment is running the internet, you are going to alienate inevitably 50% of your population, right? No matter what side you're on. And he was just like, no, I'd rather keep making $4 to $5 billion a quarter by not alienating anybody. And I've adopted that basically my whole career as a solopreneur is to keep politics out of business. Now, these days, it seems to be it's becoming harder and harder to do. I am not trying to debate a side here, but I just wanted to ask you what your take on that is in terms of introducing your politics, whatever they are, as a marketing tool for your business.
Well, I think that, we say things like, in any, especially if you're an entrepreneur, we say things like, don't talk about religion and politics because you're going to alienate people. And that, of course, is an entire case study, just sociopsychology right there. Why? Why is
Right.
that an alienating thing? It's like,
Yeah.
I have worked a job years ago as a young man working at a music store. I have worked a job where everything was fine until I asked what church I went to.
Yeah.
Turns out it was the wrong one. I didn't last there another 10 days. That was straight bias,
Yeah.
right? And so I've experienced that. I've experienced someone going, "Oh, you're not morally acceptable now because of whatever, and you're gone," And so why is that so heated? And it's not the actual, how do I put this? Because this is a huge conversation that can be had.
Yeah.
Where I stand on the topic is, I think you have to believe in what you have to believe in and be authentic, whatever authenticity means to you. And I think that if
Mhm.
you are subscribing to um, a prescribed belief system of any kind, or a dogmatic system of any kind, whether it's political, religious, if you're subscribing to it but going against who you are in some manner to do it, or being blinded in some way, then that's inauthentic. So if you're inauthentic, that's where you're wrong. And I think dogma and inauthenticity go hand in hand. So I do not subscribe to a religion. I do not subscribe to a political party. That's where I'm at. I'm
Mhm.
about reason and empathy, decency, logic, reason, and social equity in general. That's where I'm at. So I I have a firmly raised eyebrow to all politicians, and I always have. But at the same time, what am I looking at today in the last few years? I'm looking at a a significant increase in the volatility of the populace when it comes to political discourse. So
Yeah.
when I see that, I'm thinking, okay, well, I can't I can't and I shouldn't remain completely neutral and apathetic and just let it all burn down as much as I want to. But at the same time, I have to check my own self too, because
Yeah.
I don't care if I alienate people that I consider to be extremely immoral and disconnected from reason and decency. If
Mhm.
you're that kind of person, I probably don't care what you think. I don't have to worry about that, but I don't need to go on some huge, crazy, unhinged rant and make everybody think this guy is not doing well. I don't think I want to do business with him. And that's where I check myself as best I can, because I've got a lot of opinions, but I don't lead with them. How's that? I don't lead with my opinions.
And I think that's where I land as well, right? Be a good human first, and then whatever your beliefs are, your beliefs are. Like that's just really it's
Sure.
that simple to me, right? And I know that probably sounds like it comes from privilege and all that bullshit to me because no one knows how anyone else is born, raised, what they think. No one's in anybody else's head. So I think the good
Right.
human first, whatever you believe second is fine, but it's the vitriol and the lack of civil discourse. That's the thing that weirds me out and has the benefit of all of that. And this is kind of where I'm leading, right? Is the benefit of all of that is we all got sick of it real fast and jumped off of social media, took a break, just closed accounts, whatever it was. I've been feeling great not being on social media as much. Now, I know you have 3 kids and they're all in that teen to early adult phase, right?
21, 20, and 16.
21, 20, and 16. Okay. So they're
Yeah.
they're they're adults. But
Yeah.
there's obviously a generational gap between the two. What's the
Sure.
one thing that they've taught you that has kind of completely changed your outlook on things? Is there one
Sure.
thing that you can kind of pinpoint?
Yeah, I can. And they didn't even try to do it the way it worked out. What happened was that what I like to tell people right now is that in 2 months, I'm going to be 50 years old, right? I was an old man at 35 compared to now.
Yeah.
Okay. When I was 35 and I had young children at home, they were, they were, they weren't roommates. They weren't peers. They were babies. They were little kids. I was being a dad, trying to keep alive and teach them about life and toilets and whatever else, right? Uh, so I was that 35-year-old who had that, not my kids, but the teens, and there was this modern music, and what the hell's a Taylor Swift, and da da da, and I was that 35-year-old old man.
Yeah.
And then as my kids got older, and I tried, I mean, I'm not a perfect dad, but I tried to teach them and give them some insight on how life works, um, and over time, I realized that they were opening my mind to possibilities, that things weren't like they were back then. And the things that I discovered when I was 14 are going to have a connection to me deeper than anything else because of my age at the time. Music that I discovered 14, 15, 16 years old, it's going to be part of my soul because it was a formulative time when I discovered this, right? And so that's in there. And I have memories and I have nostalgia the way anybody does. But I stopped being closed off to what's new. I stopped being closed off to modern things. And guess what? I discovered that the sea of trash that's out there in the world of creative stuff is the same sea of trash that I had when I was 15. Except you know what? There's good stuff too. And I started discovering music that I would never have been open to in the last
Yeah.
3 years because of my kids. Not because they said, no, really, Dad, you got to give Justin Bieber a chance. It wasn't any type of plea. It was just being around them and understanding that, wow, I can see myself in them.
Right.
I don't want to be that old man yelling at a cloud. And that challenges people because people our age, Matt, when I say this, and I have in recent years, they go, I hear what you're saying, but no, the kids are stupid. And I'm like, no, you got to stop. Some kids
Yeah.
are stupid. And
Yeah.
the truth is, if you're smarter than a 15-year-old, good. You're supposed to be.
He's
But
supposed to be.
but are you teaching them or are you criticizing them? Because
Right.
if you keep pushing them away and say you're a dumb kid, you're a dumb kid, you're a dumb kid, they're not going to listen to you at all, and you're perpetuating the cycle. And so when I see my fellow Gen Xers in their videos, some who have huge channels with their vertical video selfies talking about when I was a kid, blah blah, and they have the whole Gen X theme about how, and I'm like, oh my god, Gen X sounds like our parents.
Yeah.
What happened?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you sound like boomers. What are you doing? And so there's a balance there. There's a lot of shit going on in the modern space and music and culture that's annoying. But come on, man, I was 10 in 1985, as if that was the peak of culture.
Right. Right.
you know. So I've learned from my kids to open my mind to possibilities, and I become a better artist, and I believe a better person.
I think that's such great insight, in terms of flipping it all around and instead of presuming that we know everything, and just because we have more experience and we've been on the planet for 5 decades, that we know all of human knowledge, and that there's nothing left to learn from the kids.
Right.
And yeah, it's a great perspective, because I feel like, my musical taste stopped in like 1997. And
Not too far off of that.
right. And so now I am trying to learn more. And a lot of that comes from TikTok and YouTube, and like, what track bed are they putting underneath this video? And I want to listen to that, and I go find it, and it's just kind of opened up my world. Now, I didn't plan this. I planned it, but you had no idea it was coming. What record, since we're talking about music, had the most influence on you growing up?
Interesting. That's very interesting. I guess it depends on the era, but really, if you want to talk about like the formulative era,
Yeah.
it's gonna have to be a Beatles record. But then I'm gonna have to decide which one, because that's a tough one. I'm wearing a Metallica shirt right now, but I am a Beatles head through and through. There was a time that's all I listened to. I'm a complete Beatles dork. I can probably annihilate anyone on Beatles trivia. I'm that guy.
You're that
Um, but I remember, speaking of 1985, I remember being there on the floor of the living room with my dad's vinyl, putting it on the thing and the big brown speakers, and listening to these records. And I knew all the radio songs because they listened to the oldies. But I was discovering like the White Album and Abbey Road and things like that. So it would have to be a Beatles record for sure. That spoke to me in a way that affected how I acted on a daily basis, what I considered to be cool and important, my fashion sense, and of course my music interests as well. Everything I did was somehow hinged around the Beatles. As for what album, though, that's like asking which of your kids is your favorite, man.
I know you got one. I know you got a favorite kid. You don't have to tell
Yeah.
the other two, but I know you got one.
I hate to sound political, but they're all my favorite for different reasons. They're very different human beings.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know what record it would have to be from the Beatles, but
But that
realistically, it's probably Abbey Road.
Yeah. That narrows it down quite a bit. And it's funny you say that, because I almost brought up one of the Beatles records I have. I have a color vinyl of Sergeant Pepper's. So the cover
Nice.
is printed onto the vinyl, right? I found it in a record store years ago, and I was going to bring that up and just to talk about records and vinyl and whatnot. And it just so happens that you talked about the Beatles, but that spurred a memory. I remember the first time I ever heard the Beatles. God, this must have been the late 70s, early 80s, right? And 45s were still a thing. And my parents, had their little box of 45s, and it had the Tony Bennett and the Elvis and the,
Sure.
Peggy Lee and all that. And one record that was in there just had a big apple with a slice out of it. And that's when the Beatles were on Apple Records, right? And one side of it, the A side was Hey Jude, the B side was Revolution. And so I'd listen to Hey Jude as a kid because I could sing that chorus over and over and over. But then I don't know what happened. Like one day, and I remember it, I took this little white vinyl record player out and I put it on and I flipped it over and I wanted to listen to Revolution. That was the first time I think I had really heard like a rock song. You know what I mean? Where I was just like, why are the vocals why do they sound like grungy? Why does the guitar sound so dirty, right? I mean, you're a young kid.
Yeah.
You don't really have musical
Sure.
taste, right? But you hear that thing, you're like, oh, this is different. And I'm really digging this. And yeah, from that point on, I was just like, let me figure out who these Beatles are. And, obviously, you learn all that stuff. But I think a lot of us kind of start in that same way. Now, did you get that? Did you discover the Beatles on your own, or did somebody introduce you to it? Did you hear it at home?
Oh no, it was my dad. My dad for sure.
Oh,
My
your
dad's
dad.
a
Yeah,
musician,
just going
and
through
my
that.
dad, yeah, he's a musician as well, and he was big on the British invasion rock and roll, and that's what
Yeah.
he constantly played. So because of my
Right on.
mom, I was exposed to girl groups and Motown and things like that, but also rock and roll and more of the bubblegum pop. And my dad was like British rock and roll, 60s.
Yeah.
That was his thing. So that's
It's funny you mentioned those big brown speakers, man. Those used to have the consoles, right? That had the record player
Yeah.
and the speakers and the crisscrossed, right? Oh, Jesus, I'm old. And
yeah.
but those things sound great. A friend of mine bought one at like a yard sale or a swap shop or something like that. Brought it home. It was like 9,000 pounds, right? But get it into the apartment, put this thing on, and it's all like tube amps and it's all real electronics. It's not, the stuff that's out today, all the solid state stuff. And it sounded so warm and so beautiful. And the needle on the record player was shit and it was scratchy and it was gross. But man, oh man, did it have that sound that just
Yeah,
is
yeah.
so clean and pristine now. I liked that dirty, way too much bass, way too much treble, right? Nothing in the mids. It was beautiful. And I was
It
suddenly
was.
like 8 or 9 years old again, on this
Yeah, no, exactly. It
hi-fi.
is. There's a good friend of mine here in town. He's actually a Scottish man who moved
Yep.
to Houston 20 years ago, and he's a photographer as well. That's how we met. But he moved here 20 years ago for work. He works for one of these big accounting firms or whatever. And he's a huge vinyl head. I mean, we're talking about rooms full of vinyl. And he has, his front door is just boxes of Amazon empty boxes from recent shipments daily, daily, daily. That's what he does. That's what he spends his money on. And he is an absolute audiophile. And he's got the first pressing of this, but also the 120-gram pressing of that. And he is huge on it. And his record player is pristine and perfect. And he's one of those, is what I'm
One of those
saying. But the
guys.
other day, for the first time in years, accidentally, we ended up sitting down and just he showed. You ever heard this one? I said no. We talk about it. We spin it. We look at the liner notes. We put it away. We get another one. Hey, I remember this one. Oh, that's a new pressing from Japan. We take it out. We spin it. And suddenly, after a little while of that, I was like, I haven't done this in 30 years. I haven't hung out with a mate and listened to vinyl excitedly in so long, and it was like transformed back to the 80s, when I used to show up at my neighbor's house at 7 years old with my Michael Jackson Beat It. Look, my parents got it for me. And
Right?
my friend, oh, come on in, come on in. 1982 or whatever, it was nice. And I'm not, again, when 15 years ago, I wasn't just nostalgic. I was like, modern stuff is horrible. But now I enjoy the nostalgia, but also accepting that I can jump on Spotify and hear the entire catalog instantly.
Yeah. Well,
I kind of like both.
that's a big thing. I've down in my living room, got a big wall display. I've probably got about 1,000 vinyl records down there, and from all my DJ days, and then when I was collecting and doing all that stuff, and that's how I got started in live streaming in 1999. Was a buddy of mine that I used to DJ with. We used to do exactly what you said, which is I'd play a record for him, he'd play a record for me, right? And we just kind of explore our different tastes. And it was great because half the stuff, he was from New York, half the stuff that he listened to, I had never heard of, and vice versa, right? I was introducing him to a lot of hip hop and a lot of stuff that he didn't know. So it was a wonderful time, but we said, why don't we do this, on the radio? And that's generally how we started, and that's what I was doing for live streaming, is we were just going back and forth. I'd play a set, he'd play a set, I'd play a set, or we'd trade records and have to mix into each other. And there was something about that exploration, that instant creativity, the fact that you had to improvise on the fly and kind of match the vibe and then work the whole thing together, that brought back so much joy. And you say that you haven't done that in a long time, or you hadn't done it in a long time. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I did that either. Just broke out the Techniques 1200s and throw on the vinyl and just sat there with a pile of vinyl around me, just listening to the good tracks, right? Because
Right.
today I wanted to listen to D'Angelo, right? D'Angelo passed last week or the week before. And I was a big D'Angelo head, and I've got Brown Sugar downstairs on vinyl. And I was going to go find that and bring all the stuff out and listen to it like I listened to it in 95. And instead, I went on Apple Music and I found not only Brown Sugar, but like the 30-song extended version. And now I find myself just clicking through them like, oh, yeah, no, yeah, no, yeah, skipping through the song, not letting it do the same thing that vinyl would do. I would never, needle jump through a song. So it's
Yeah.
just interesting how we've changed how we approach music, how we approach our appreciation of it, our experience of it in whatever form. You said the last time we talked that you had to create or you were unhappy, right? You said that, or forgive the quote, but something along those lines. If you're not
That's
creating,
fair.
you're not happy, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
What happens when you create something and it doesn't land like you hope?
It doesn't like, yeah, yeah. No, that's tough. Right now, me, 2025 in recent years, um, it doesn't bother me, which is weird. But historically it has.
Yeah.
Um, and like, I don't care about a specific piece, right? Like an image, people liking that. When my head starts to unravel some nights and some days when I'm feeling low, and it's just been a shitty week, and then I'm like, what am I doing? It's not why did I do that? It's like, what am I doing any of this for? That's where the doubt creeps in of like, why have I even bothered at all? But the specific works, I'm fairly confident in, interestingly. So when I get mental and I have my moment of self doubt and all, it's mostly imposter syndrome and just, what have I done the last 15 years of other than waste my life? But for some reason, the individual pieces, I don't care how they land,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. I
It,
get
it, no, it,
surprised sometimes, but I don't get upset is the word.
no, and I don't think anybody should get upset with it, right? It's all your
Yeah.
approach to failure. It's your relationship to failure. How much do you
Yeah.
accept it? How much do you embrace it, right? And you've always struck me as the type that kind of embraces that because you've got that student mindset. And it's not you walk in thinking you're the smartest guy in the room. You walk in looking to learn and looking to expand. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of us are built that same way. But I asked the question because I find that I'm made up the same way. However, lately I've been getting really frustrated with being able to see something in my head, knowing I have the skills to create that thing, but then after the ninth, 10th, 12th iteration and I'm still not getting it, I start getting that, or I start rationalizing saying the universe must be telling me this isn't the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, right?
It's a
And I
sign. It's a
rationalize it
sign.
away, right? Which is fine. But I often I often stop and then pivot and take it in a different direction, which is also fine,
Yeah.
right? Because that's where you find, you start to release and actually really use your imagination and create. So maybe it's the forced expectation. Maybe it's that I'm trying to go into it with a vision and saying that's how it has to be or it won't work, instead
Right.
of just pivoting and letting the muses visit. So
Yeah, that
yeah,
that that I've
yeah,
been frustrated with. Yes, I've been frustrated with having a vision and idea, and the execution falls short, and I don't think anyone knows except me. And
right.
I'm just like, that kind of stings. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So it happened. It happened recently. I was doing a shoot, and I was going after. I was just doing a creative shoot. I had a friend of mine come in, and we were doing boudoir, and we were doing hard light stuff, and then we were also doing just some fashion work on plain white. We were doing all sorts of stuff, and I wanted to get into this like old Hollywood look. And I've been using for post processing, I've been using Boris effects a lot lately, and using a lot of their film stock emulations and a couple of
Yeah,
their
yeah.
lens flares and things like that.
Good
Right?
stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing for post production quickly. Right? No tool does everything perfectly, but Boris Effects allows me to just kind of play in ways that I don't normally play. And I'm not plugging,
Right.
I'm not giving you an affiliate code. I'm just saying, like, I found that it was enjoyable again to be doing that instead of being stuck in Photoshop and just doing all the retouching. And I'm not a Photoshop wizard. I've got all the tools, but it was taking too long, right? So I'm using Boris Effects.
Sure.
Anyway, I'm way
Yeah.
off tangent. Yay, Adderall and caffeine. All right. So point being, I'm trying to shoot with this woman and going for this like old Hollywood look, but I wanted to add a couple of different lighting elements to it. So I shot it in the studio and I was like, all right, I could take that into post and make what I want to make. And just became so frustrated with not being able to make the thing that I shot the photo for. And it's no problem with Boris effects. It was just I didn't shoot the photo right. Therefore, I was trying to force it in post production. Therefore,
Yeah.
it wasn't meeting my expectations. And I got more and more and more frustrated rather than just being, all right, learn from this, set up your lights differently. Don't be such an asshole and think you got it in one shot. And, so that's where I, get frustrated. But then you're able to take that picture and do some other stuff with it. And now it takes on a whole new life and voice and story. And I don't mind that. It's that initial, I had the vision here and I can't seem to produce it. It becomes really infuriating to me not be able to deliver it,
100%. 100% infuriating. I know that feeling all too well. And then you couple that, at least for me, you couple that with the frustration of like, how is it that when I completely improvised that one set, that one day, I pulled it out of my ass and it took 5 minutes to do it, and it's some of my best work. How does that end up my best work? But when I try, and then it just goes from there, because you can't create those improv moments that happen spontaneously. You can't plan that. And so a lot of times I have a nice balance of the work that I love, of my own work, that I'm like, you know what? I'm proud of that one. I like
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
It's about 50-50 planned, 50% planned, 50% improvised. So I have a nice balance there. I don't know that one way works for another, but it is frustrating when I have this master plan and then I fail. I give myself a B- at best. And I'm like, hey, yeah, I know what you mean.
All right. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So I
Mhm.
was going through Lightroom today. I had a buddy who lost his dog yesterday. I had taken some portraits of him years ago. So I had to go into Lightroom and search through whatever catalog and, go back through the archives and find a couple more pictures of him and his dog and send them along, which I love doing for people. But as I was there, I was also thinking about tonight and I was just like, oh, I should go back through the photos that I took at Nino's workshop in 21, I think it was. And we're at
1977 or something like that.
19,
Remember?
that's what it fucking feels like, dude.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so we were at Sean Black's studio in
Right.
Massachusetts. And I had this for you, and I wanted, since we've been talking so much about age, I wanted to ask you this. What version of you do you see in this image? Knowing that it was a couple of years ago, knowing that things have changed, what do you think about when you see this version of you?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting. That is that image has it. That image itself, not so much, but the time frame represents an interesting period of my life. Um, that was probably the last time, not the last, but the tail end of when I felt like unrealistically confident in everything that I was doing. Everything that I was doing in my health, that's key,
Right.
and in my work and in my plans. And I had this like, I'm aware that I wasn't King Midas, but I acted like it. I didn't tell
Sure.
people I was great. I just kind of thought if everything's blowing up, I can fix it. And if things are going great, of course they are. And if they're not, I will adjust. And I had this like just unwavering positivity that I can solve anything that comes at me. And since then, I've had a lot of sobering realities, to be honest with you, without trying to get dramatic.
No, no.
And instead of feeling like that's a problem, I think it's a life-saving thing for me because I'm much more realistic and I'm trying to understand myself in terms of what I'm capable of, what I'm not capable of, and realizing that the endless positivity and the unrealistic idea that I can fix anything, it was killing me. And so that's what that shot reminds me of. It reminds me of that era, the tail end of the era where I thought I could fix everything, anything, anyone, all the time. And now I've been forced in recent months to reevaluate. And like I said, I consider it a lifesaver, to be honest. And that's where I'm at now. I'm in the middle of that reevaluation and that rebuilding. And I think I want to build back up, not to indestructible Nino, because I was never really indestructible. I just thought
Right.
I was emotionally and physically, to boundary aware, you know. How's that?
No, that's fantastic. Do you feel right? Because I always try to look back a couple of years and remember. Right, Facebook is great at this. Facebook will serve you all sorts of memory shit when you're least expecting it. It's just like, oh, you're having a great day. Here's an old relationship. Oh, you're having a great day. Oh, here's your dog that died 5 years ago. It's just like, awesome. Thanks, Facebook.
Thanks, Facebook.
But
appreciate that.
But the thing that I like about it is it always puts me in a place I'm like, wow, life was really different then. I was really different then. Situations were different, finances, location, all that. And it makes me oftentimes feel much more content with where I'm at now, right? Sure. And confidence, whether it's real or made up or a mask or whatever, I think what I often see are not the, oh, I was thinner, I was better looking, like whatever that. It's more, wow, I had no idea what I was doing. I had ignorance. I was faking it. Wow, I was full of shit when I was talking that stuff, you know? And it's sobering in a wonderful way because I realize that all those positive changes that you make every day, whether it's for your health, whether it's for your mental well-being, whether it's for your sex life, whatever it is that you're doing something every day for, all those little pieces build up. And you can look back 3 years and be like, wow, I've become a much better man. Or, wow, I was a much better man then. I'm a piece of shit now. But I mean, whichever side you're on, and it depends on the day for me, but I look at it and I say, I'm much happier that I went through whatever that was because it gave me the insight to be here now.
That's correct. That I completely agree with that. And I'm blessed in that in the last arguably 5 years, mistakes that I have made are not detrimental. They're not like, oh my God, end all. I mean, there's some consequences that were severe from it, but it's not like, man, that heroin addiction was a rough summer.
Man, kick and smack is hard.
It's some hard shit, man. I don't have anything that dramatic, but I do have some dumb shit that I went through and I did, and decisions that I made, and they had consequences, and some of them are still lingering. Not like STD lingering, but they're still lingering.
Some things can never be cured, man.
Whatever happens in Vegas. No. So I'm acutely aware. I'm cognizant of the fact that I'm not dealing, like I said, with a heroin addiction or that whatever. I don't have that like TV show drama, but at the same time, I have enough drama to learn from it. And so I don't think, hey, that photo you showed me, Matt, was a complete fraud. That's not what I'm trying to suggest. I'm saying that the man in that photo was a little more delusional than he is today. And I feel a certain sense of freedom in seeing that I'm not delusional anymore. And it's sobering, like you said, in a wonderful way. But sobriety can sometimes be a little painful too. So I think, but I think this growth back into what I hope to be will be the most authentic version of me yet, and that's the plan.
And there's not a better answer than that, insofar as, again, I come back to the fact that and this is one thing I've always respected about you, is that you're always willing to learn, you're always willing to grow, and just kind of build on the experience, knowing that whatever this cosmic journey is that we're on, it's just a collection of experiences, and we're just trying to write that book for ourselves, right? And there are going to be good chapters and bad chapters. But at the end of the day, you're the one that gets to write it, and there's no boundaries. So even though there's a boundaries, Nino, floating around there these days, there's no boundaries on what it is that we can do. And I just love the fact that you're always looking at things with a reflective nature in it as well, saying, who was I? Who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I get there? And it's this constant growth, this constant evolution. It's
well, thank you.
It's nice to see that, especially for someone, and it's not blowing smoke, but it's someone at your level that's been doing this a long time, that has been very successful, to constantly be in that state of wanting to grow and do more is inspiring to a lot of people, because this shit never ends, right? Take it from the two old guys on screen, right? This stuff never ends. So don't think you have it all figured out just yet.
And the truth is, though, and I appreciate the kind words, Matt. Thank you. But without going too much into it, right now, with everything that happened in the last year, there's been some business collapses, and it's my health that I've been concerned about, and I had to make some sweeping changes to try to take care of that, or at least focus on it. I don't have an
Yep.
acute diagnosis or anything, but I have something that I should not have ignored last year. And so I'm in a situation right now where arguably I'm not successful right now. I'm in
Mm.
rebuild mode, and that's very stressful. It's very it can be disheartening some mornings. You're like, I remember, let's get back. We got to get back up, but it's going to take some work. I'm rebuilding some businesses that had to collapse. I'm rebuilding. I can't just be like, I know, let's travel the East Coast. No, I need to take care of my health. So I'm in a position of rebuilding. So when you said all those very nice things about me, when you said successful, I thought, wait, for the first time in a long time, I don't feel that. But I do feel like I can rebuild, and I'm going to, because I have not run into the problems that I've had this year because of gross negligence, or because I was stomping faces and I got caught. I've always been relatively authentic. Don't get me wrong. I stay true to myself, but I'm not superhuman, and accepting that is hard. And I think that when I come back, I'll be at a more sustainable pace. How's that? So right now, yeah, it's a little tight, it's a little low, but I'm not like, oh, boo hoo, blah, blah, everyone help me out. I'm just like, okay, pivot and go. That's what I'm going to do. And I've done it before. I'm going to do it again. 2015 was one of the worst years of my life. And I did the pivot of all hell that year. And I didn't die. So I'm trying to pivot again. It's nowhere near as bad as it was. So I'm trying to keep a positive attitude, but I just want to be clear, since we're being so frank on this whole
Yeah.
discourse here, that it's hard right now. It is. And I'm not asking for pity. I'm just saying I got shit to do.
And we were having this bit of this conversation before we went live. Just kind of how are things? How's business? How are things going? And the story that you're saying is exactly the same as mine. It's the exact same story that I heard Johnny Edward generally telling yesterday. I had 3 friends close their studios last week throughout Canada and the US. I had 3 friends close studios, a couple that are on the ropes. And yeah, it's really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I There's no Nostradamus mask here where I was just like, I knew this was coming. But like you, I'm always thinking in the back of my head, this is fleeting, this is temporary. Keep building, keep thinking about what happens if you can't do this anymore. Right. So that's always been in the back of my head. What happens if I go blind? Can I still be a photographer? Well, probably not. No idea. But if that were the case, if I were stupid and, I'm lighting the grill the wrong way and I singe my eyes out, then my career is gone. So what do I do at that point? And I've always been someone that tries to look a couple of years ahead and say, all right, I might not have the riches now. I might not have what I want to build in front of me right now, but I know where I want to go. And it's going to be down this road. And it's going to take me a while, but why not start doing that now? And for the past
Right.
6 months, basically since WPPI, I left WPPI and was just like, shit needs to change really, really fast. And not because I saw any indicators or that things were bad. This year started off with a bang. I was crushing. And then about mid-year, it was like driving a supercar into a brick wall, and it just evaporated, right? And it was
Yep.
leads dried up, jobs dried up, contracts ended as they always do. And I found myself going, well, that happened a lot faster than I thought it was going to. But I'm glad I'm doing things like this to see where it goes. I don't ever want to get to the point where I was just like, well, I wish I had done that. I wish I had done this more when times were bad. Both of us went through the 2008 recession. We know what it's like to, go through this same thing. But back then, I was still getting paid every 2 weeks. I was still, having benefits that I didn't have to pay for. And I had a 401k. Now I'm
Yeah.
just like, well, shit. I'm
But
lactose intolerant. I can't have gluten. All that shit costs too much. I'm not getting clients coming
yeah,
in. Oh my God, what do I do? Well, time to go back to selling body fluids. So I think we're all at the
I'm not there
point
yet, but talk
where
to me next week.
it's times are tough in Maine. So I think we're all kind of feeling this general
Yep.
uneasiness, this discomfort,
Mhm.
right? And we're all trying not to admit like things are rough. But I'm finding that by just having these conversations, oh, okay, it's not just me. It's not just me. And that's not to be like, wow, he sucks or she sucks just like I do. It's not that. It's no matter where in the country you are, things are a little bit more difficult these days, regardless of what industry you're in. So, for us creatives who spend so much time in our fucking heads, how do we how do we like prep for what could be in a complete sea change in how we offer services and what we do? Are you thinking about that sort of preparation outside of the things you're already doing for your health and your business? Is there something that you see yourself doing 5 years from now, 10 years from now that's different from what you're doing now?
I don't know that I have anything accurately targeted for 5 or 10 years from now, but I do have a general approach, a general way of thinking.
Sure.
Um, and when it comes to being a creative in not only this economy but this environment, and the atmosphere of the country is poor, both financially and emotionally.
Yeah.
Uh, but this is, rather than look within, rather than look at what can Nino do to save this aspect of a business or to build something back. What can Nino do to save Nino? Which I have to consider, obviously.
Sure.
But if I think a little more collectively, then I find I have a responsibility as an artist to continue. Because if the economy, let's start with that, if the
Mm-hmm.
economy is poor and people are like, well, I guess I got to go get 2 or 3 part-time jobs. I got to go sell instruments again. I got to go work at a service job like we talked about at the top of this conversation. If I go back into the corporate machine because I need to survive and I give up on art, that that is it pushes it forward in the wrong direction, because now you start losing artists. They come out of the mixture and they go into the machine. And when the artists go fully into the machine and the art goes away, the machine absorbs it and gets bigger and the artist gets smaller. So you have not just a responsibility to yourself, you have a responsibility to art as a whole to not give up. Because if you do give up, you're hurting everyone else around you, maybe not today, but in 5 years, when there are measurably less people trying to do art because they think, I've got to survive. And you
Right.
might think, God damn, Nino, but I got to survive. Well, so do I. But one thing that keeps me going is that responsibility. I don't have the luxury of walking into a job somewhere, because if I walk in fact, last year during Christmas time, one of my kids was like, "Hey, I'm gonna get a part-time job. They're hiring for the holidays." And I said,
Yep.
"That could be fun," because where I moved last October is a hop, skip, and a jump from a Guitar Center. And I was like, "Yeah, I could sell guitars for the holidays and put some money away, or even, just have some fun for the holidays, and maybe get some discounts on a guitar or something. It'd be cool." I
Sure.
was like, "Cool." So I went to apply, and this is where I'm gonna sound like an old man. This very older millennial, or excuse me, older Gen Z, younger millennial manager, assistant manager was like, you haven't had a job since 2007? I said, no, 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 no. I've been self-employed. And he's like, where'd you work before? And I told him, and he's like, well, can we call them? And I was like, why? It's been 18 years. He's like, well, what have you been doing since then? I said, dude, I'm self-employed. At this point, I'm trying to not show my Instagram or something, because that's going to get
Right.
me in trouble.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Right.
I was like, kid, I'm a photographer, I'm a teacher. And all. He's like, well, have you worked at a music store? I said, yes. And I said, I was like, probably before you were born. He's like, can we call them? I said, no, you can't call a store that closed in 2002. And he's like, well, I was like, just give me a chance for a week and you'll see I kick ass. And if I don't, fire me. He's like, no, I have to have job experience. Let me talk to my region. I'm like, kid, just never mind. So my point is, I have to do this, not just because I can't get a job at Guitar Center for fun on the holidays, but
Right.
because I have a responsibility to the art. I really do. And if I keep giving up, and I don't want to just turn into like, Rage Against the Machine, even though I
Right.
kind of am. When I say the machine, I'm not being blindly politically angry. I'm saying very true. If you all just go, oh, the hell with it, I gotta go get some jobs. I'm gonna give up the art. I'm gonna give up the art. I'm gonna give up the art. Over time, the machine will get bigger. The artist will get smaller. Now that is a push and pull, and eventually it will blow up. But I don't want to be part of the reason why art hits a low of some kind because I gave up. So that's what I tell artists in this environment, in this economy, in this atmosphere. You kind of owe it to your other artists. And if everyone thinks this way, we all benefit.
I agree with so much of that. And we talk a lot about identity. When I had Sue Bryce on a couple weeks back, couple episodes back, we talked a lot about how we assume an identity and we are just a photographer, right? Instead of thinking we're a creator or an artist. And we often put these limits on ourselves and our own creativity because we're in love with the romantic idea of being a thing with a title, right? And artist is too culturally sensitive insofar as people are like, oh, it's the starving artist trope. Oh, you're an artist, therefore you don't make a real living unless you are like one of the two artists that they happen to know, right? So
Andy Warhol.
Andy, exactly, like an Andy Warhol, Andy Leibovitz, right? Someone like that. And the thing that I've been trying to do is I talk to especially younger creatives, and I'm talking high school age, college age, that you don't have to be that thing. Even though your primary might be a musician, you're a concert pianist. My guess is that spicy brain of yours also writes, also doodles, right? And it also have these different artistic creative outlets. So, outside of photography and the tools and your music, I'm assuming, and I'll make the big assumption, that you have all these other outlets as well that you like to do. That might not ever be a profession, but you're still contributing to the basis and the foundation of an artistic community, right? Like even if you're making dream catchers and pot holders, right? You're still doing something creative. You're bringing something into the world that hadn't been seen before, right? Exactly. And I just don't think they spend so much time on their identity about what they are so they can tell people what they are and put it on their business card rather than saying, you know what, I'm a creator, I'm an artist, I'm put here to bring things into the world. And I've been trying to embrace more of that lately for myself in writing and video and photos and making things in my wood shop and like music, right? All these different things. While I probably won't make money at a lot of them, they still keep that high drive going. I feel like I'm a Belgian Malinois for art, right? I'm just like this hyper dog that has to be doing something related to work, or I go a little bit crazy and I rip the couch apart. So, how do you feel about some of we'll call them the lesser deities, the minor hobbies that you have? Is there one that you particularly love?
Yeah, it's the only creative outlet that I cannot do in the wrong mindset, and that's writing. I don't really do fiction. I don't do creative writing per se. I do essays and sort of cultural observation and things like that. And I do pummel my essays onto a Substack that no one reads. But every now and then I get motivated and I put it out there. And I tell myself I'm not worried about getting it out there. I just need to write it. And going back to also what we talked about an hour ago, people don't want to communicate, right? So I have very few people in my life who I can spend time with and have a conversation like we're having tonight, or even more sort of academic than we had tonight. Very few people who want to do that. So I just kind of put it out in essay form. But writing is the only thing I can't do when I'm not in the mindset. I can play a gig on music. If I'm having a bad day, I'm stressed, I can still get through the gig. I can go through a shoot, I can get through, I can retouch. I can do all that even if my mind's off. Cannot write if my mind's off. If I'm motivated by something that makes me angry, I can write with that. But if I'm off, the writing does not happen, which is why I
Yeah.
struggled so badly when I was like writing for F Stoppers and Shutter and all these magazines for photography. I couldn't write if I'm so that is one thing I don't ever want to do for a living, but I do like writing quite a bit. And of course the music thing goes in waves. I did 3 months solid of it earlier this year, and then I haven't touched the guitars until last week
Yeah.
for after 6 months. So music goes in and out. Music is my number one passion in life, but the writing one is one I think sneaks back.
I feel like some of my essays are definitely less valuable than a dream catcher for sure. So all right. So time as always slips by really, really quickly. We've been on here for about an hour. Before we get too far, as I try to land this plane, I'm going to try a new segment. Now, I don't have themes, I don't have music to it, but I do have graphics. So we've got the
Graphics are good.
incoming hot takes, baby. So
Okay.
takes when I hear other people say them, right? I'm just like, oh, you're causing controversy. It's rage bait, it's clickbait. But here I am doing hot takes because I ran out of ideas, and it's better than a listicle. So, hot take. Let's trade off. What do you got?
Okay. Okay. What's a hot take? Probably a really, really hot take right now, especially in the visual arts like we're in
Yeah.
photography. A really, really hot take right now is that AI is going to kill the fake artists and not the real ones. I know that sounds brutal.
I had written down AI's not going to kill creative. It's going to kill the people who are faking it. Holy shit, we were thinking along the same lines.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. I think that's true. Why is it that you feel that way?
I feel that way because, I've written about this and on essays that nobody reads. But think about this. We talked about a lot of things tonight that were historical. We talked about the 80s. We talked about vinyl records. We talked about even a few years ago in Boston. That's history, right? So there's history there. So when I make a piece of art, even though my photography isn't like socially profound or politically profound, when I make a piece of art, everything that came together to make that piece of art is my 49-year history coming together. Every conversation I've had, every tear I've shed, every pain I felt, every joy I've had, every failure, every success, everything culminated into that piece. Whether you are looking to look for that or not, it's all there. And if you chose to explore more about it, more about who created it, there would be a story, even if it's a simple one. There would be something. And you think, why did someone make that? Where did he get to the point where he's shooting that? Questions come up in your head. And there's a story and there's a 49-year history that you cannot possibly ever know all about, but it's there. What is AI? It is an adult that was born yesterday who knows everything and has no purpose behind it. There's no history. And history is existence, and that's people, and that's personality. That we can go into philosophy here, because your history, your existence is time and space, and you're moving through time and space, and all that accumulates into who you are right now. AI is a simulation of all of that by definition, and so the image is good. So this is why I say fake creatives, like you were saying, are the ones who are going to fall into the cracks and forgotten. Because if you are a result-oriented art consumer, that's a cool image. That's where your thought process ends, and you won't notice AI work. You just think, that's a cool image. Whereas, that's a cool image. Who made that? Look at this Metallica cover. Yeah, it's a bunch of crosses with hands and puppet strings on crosses. It's called Master of Puppets. Who made this? What does it mean? Why did they make it? What are they trying to say by it? How the hell did they get that kind of airbrush work in 1986? All these questions come to mind on an album cover. But if AI produced it, those questions have no answers.
Wow. I'm going to make that a short. I'm going to clip that up, and I'm also going to put your Substack underneath it. Think yeah. So no, I think that's great. My similar take on that is it's going to separate the people that are driven from the people that are lazy. The people that rely on AI to do everything in their business, all their writing, all their imagery, all their marketing, all their stuff, all good productivity tools. But if you become dependent on it, you're just getting lazy and you're not really pushing forward. And I think from what I've noticed, and I stay deep in the world of AI. I don't talk about it a ton, but I'm deep in it. I try to learn as much as I can about all the models and everything that
Same.
are out there.
Yeah.
It's getting dumber because I was talking to Parker Pfister. Parker and I were talking yesterday like this, and we were talking about AI, about how it's getting dumber, and it's demonstrably dumber. The reason being, we're all asking it questions and it gives us some shitty answer, which we then say, oh, yeah, that was great, fantastic. And it gets reinforced because we copy it. So therefore, we're triggering something in the model to say, oh, this must be important. Let me serve this same type of answer to other people. And now it's not just the small conversation. Now people are building agentic models where we're going out and we're starting to introduce security problems. We're starting to introduce all of this dumb stuff that we're relying on and we're trusting will give us the right answer. But it ain't giving us the right answer because why? We're collectively dumb. We're pretty dumb. And for the most part, the information that we're getting back is just kind of what we want to hear. That doesn't mean that it's right. And it's what it's doing is killing the critical thinking skills. So if you don't approach your business or your art with at least some understanding that there has to be independence in your thinking versus something that's giving you an edge on your productivity, if you start combining all of that and getting lazy, that's what's going to harm you. It's not the tools themselves. The tools are pretty dumb that you can manipulate, but you have to be able to start here and understand what it is that you want. So it's the old computer science thing, garbage in, garbage out, right? All we're doing is being like, make Yoda on water skis. And it's just kind of like, okay, I guess we're doing Yoda on water skis and we'll make a video about that.
And honestly, like that vacuous, empty, dismissible art has been around forever. It's just now it's exponentially more of it. And you can participate in that if you wish, but you could have also participated that in 1987. Barrier of entry is a lot less now, but it still doesn't mean that it's not dismissible. It is.
I agree. All right. So hot takes. That's the theme song, maybe? No, we could probably come up with something better than that.
I think we'll come up with one. Yeah.
So, all right. I wrote down 5 or 6. Now you totally, got my number 1. And we already talked about keeping politics out of your business. We talked about AI is not killing creative business, but it'll kind of expose things. Now, I've got a couple that are either going to come back to bite me or I'm going to start a revolution. So I've got 2. One's about photography, one's about podcasting. Which one do you want?
Surprise me.
Personal branding sessions are just therapy. No, personal branding sessions are just journal entries with commerce.
Personal branding sessions. Okay.
So they're it's like therapy that we're turning into commerce, right? And none of us are qualified to be doing the therapy that we're doing in these sessions. And I feel like all this shit that we talk, I get real wrapped around the axle about this one because I shoot personal branding and I sit and I talk to people and I hear everything that's going on in their heads. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor, but there's a lot of people that are playing that on TV by saying you're going to have this amazing transformative experience and you're going to be a whole different person. And you say that to the wrong person in the wrong way, and you could really be doing some harm. So I think personal branding that are more about the therapy and making money off that is, in my opinion, kind of carpetbagging. So I think you are manipulating people to buy things from you when all you're really doing is holding space for them and giving them an ear. Now, that's going to piss a lot of people off. But
no, for sure.
Understand that personal branding necessary. I love doing it. I love providing it to my clients. but let's not oversell what it is that we're doing. Let's not make it into something that it's not.
I see. So with that said, if I'm understanding you right, you're saying that perhaps not you, but some people take their personal branding sessions and their service and they turn it into like kind of rogue counseling and consulting, or even like you said, therapy, really. And they're putting inflated ideas into people just to try to sell packages. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. So with that said, since I don't do personal branding sessions, I know people that do. I will say that to me, that's a little bit potentially more disingenuous than just trying to inflate someone feeling better about a boudoir session. Because a boudoir session, you can tell someone, hey, no one may ever see the photos, right? That's not the point of a boudoir session. Most of the time, they're private, right? So if you make someone feel good about themselves and they feel empowered and they take sexy pictures and they do it for themselves, they do it for a partner, they do it whatever, that's good. But that is a responsibility. That's a huge responsibility. But if you inflate them and you feel better and they take their album home and they feel good and you make a lot of money, cool. But if you're giving someone an idea that there's something that they're not as a service provider and they're believing you, there's a line somewhere, you know,
I do.
and trying to pretend that your role is bigger than that. You are not hired as a business consultant. You're technically a brand advisor, which I know there's a blur there, but I get what you're saying. And I think I agree with you, but I think people will define that threshold differently. And I think that's where the tension will come in.
And I'm sure someone can come at me and say, Matt, you're a hypocrite because you talk about connection and you talk about this and you're not a counselor. And I'm like, yes, I make it very clear that what I do is make you feel good about yourself. I allow you to come in, talk to me about anything. It's very safe. But I'm not there to counsel you through your marriage. I'm not there to solve the problems with your teenagers. I'm a photographer that presses a button in a way that's better than a lot of other photographers. That's it. I'm not sitting there with advanced degrees and telling you what to do. Because quite honestly, my 50 years of experience might absolutely set you off. And now I'm telling you, oh yeah, you know what? Quit your job. You should go ahead and start that basket business. Without a doubt, you're going to make $1 million. All you need are good photos. Like,
yeah, just get that divorce.
Just get the divorce. He doesn't like you anyway. All right. I'll throw out another one, and then if you want to have another one, that's great. If not, then don't worry about it.
Sure.
All right. So from the photography standpoint, the photography industry worships hustle culture while complaining about burnout.
Absolutely. I could not agree with that more. The worshiping of hustle culture is obviously extends past photography, and we see that on Instagram alone, but everywhere else too. You know, this sort of success idea, and unfortunately, it ties right back into the general concept that I'm hugely against, that anyone can advise you to become rich. They can't, and anyone who claims that they can advise you to become rich is lying to you, because if they're rich, they sure as hell aren't going to tell you how to be rich. They're not. So that's to me, it's an extension of that whole, call this number and that 1-800 number in 1992. Call this number and we'll show you how to make blah 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 money. And
right,
it's all promises and lies. So hustle culture is good for clicks, good for engagement, and very 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 bad for health and self-image. I think that's bullshit. I think the goal that we want is to feel not just fulfilled in some deeply spiritual sense. We have to make money, we have to pay bills, but I think that if we have this, like, maybe I'm speaking and I'm projecting a little bit here, but if I push to the end every single day, my joke used to be, oh, hi, you have what? You have a full-time job? Oh, okay. How, I work 40 hours a week. Oh, okay. So you have a part-time job. Got it. Because I'm over here with my 12 to 14-hour days, like, yay. And then of course there's the opposite side too, if I may. Someone will tell me, someone with a corporate job, for example, might be like, Nino, I get what you're saying. You got to get that work-life balance going. I'm like, It's all the same fucking day, man. Don't tell me work-life balance. I don't have PTO, bro. My job doesn't end at 5 p.m. I respect you and I honor you, but you don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
So I have balance to figure out, and I've admitted that a little while ago, right? That's where I'm at. I have
Right.
a lot of balancing to figure out, but hustle culture is a lie.
Yeah,
It's a
I
lie.
find I agree with you 1,000%, which is why I said it, right? I think what we do, and I've noticed this more over the conversations that I've had here on Generator, is that more than probably 10 of my guests have talked about burnout at one point or another in their career. We all know the toxicity of burnout. We all know about hustle culture, and most of us disagree with hustle culture. It is something that we all say. It's just like, no, it's not sustainable. However, if you look at what is being touted online, it's not about anything other than do this to get more likes, do this to get noticed. This is the way that you do your marketing. Here's how you make your money. Here's what you have to do if you want to connect with your clients better. Here's all the things that you're not using ManyChat for your Instagram DMs. Well, you're failing, right? And you're not communicating as fast as someone else. So, and then we're saying, but do it on your time. Don't burn out. Well, fuck that. All we're doing is telling people to work really, really hard and then just keep pulling that e-brake whenever they feel resistance. And I don't like the fact that we are keeping all of these standards of success and then telling people don't try to go for that, but you aren't going to succeed unless you have that. So you're probably going to have to do the thing, but just know you're going to burn out, but burnout is bad. So you don't want to do that. It's all so hypocritical in the way that things that are said online versus the conversations that we really have and the ways that the world really is. It really gets under my skin, this whole hustle culture versus burnout. As someone that has burned out repeatedly, it's one of the things that I'm really, when I see it, I get very triggered. And again, back to the beginning of this conversation. All right, it's not about you, Matt. That's what they want to do. That's their model. Let them go with it, right? And just let them go. So I just see that a lot. And I was thinking about it in the shower about some of the conversations that we've had. And yeah, that's what I wanted to go with. So we'll see what people think about that.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely a problem. But like I said, it's deeper than just the photography industry, and it goes back decades. This idea that's what that's somehow, like you said, it's not sustainable because we're literally saying, if you want to succeed, you need to hustle like crazy, and if you hustle like crazy, you're going to fail.
Right. Yeah.
What?
Exactly. Just take my course. Nino will guide you through it, right? You're just going to buy his course for $39. He'll tell you exactly how to hustle without burning out.
That's right.
I'm going to sell it, man. Speaking of selling, I do want to bring this up. I do want to bring up. Clearly, it's not working. God darn it! Oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh, wait.
So your website. As we kind of finish up here, I wanted to bring this up because I wanted you to be able to show people with respect to what they can get with NBP tools, right? Your education with the store, with all this stuff, Substack, right? Can you give us the really quick guidance through what the best way for other photographers and other creatives to navigate this site is? Like, we don't have to go through every page. I'm just,
No. Yeah, no, I'll give you a rundown. For one, you're on my website right there. That's ninobatista.com. And that, I think it is. Is that?
It is, yes. Yeah.
It is. Okay, yeah. That one thing that's interesting there, if I may say real quick, and I think that's what I want people to know about, is that in the last few months, I decided that I'm going to be an unapologetic artist and try to monetize my art in more ways than I have been for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a store that I sell digital downloads of images. I've tried Patreon over the years, and not the Patreon of you know where to get the good stuff if you
Right.
want. Link in bio. I mean, fuck all that.
Lincoln Bio.
Um, like I don't judge my friends in pornography, but I'm not a purveyor of that. Right.
Right, right, right.
So my website now reflects me trying to monetize my art via prints and
Mhm.
books and digital downloads and cool videos. And yes, it's all sexy, but it's not pornography. So I'm unapologetically trying to market and sell art and make money off art. But on my website is also tutorials, which are about to be updated heavily because my new tutorial collection, which I do one every year, the
Mhm.
2026 one, when it launches, there'll be a difference that I haven't announced yet. So this is breaking news. The way I'm going to launch it is anybody who bought the pre-sale got it super cheap, dirt cheap,
Yep.
and the pre-sale's still on for those wondering. But once it's launched, it's not going to be get it or don't. Nope. It's going to be every video in it, and a couple are going to be clumped together, are going to be a la carte, or you can buy them as a bundle. So you can like, oh, I want this one 77-minute clip because it shows studio fashion editing and color grading. I want to buy that, and I'll
Yep.
download it, or I can mix and match. So you can buy the collection a la carte, and that's the first time I've done that. So that's going to be a little bit different, kind of cool and exciting. And that collection also comes with all my actions and cool things like that. And I've made a bunch of new ones of those too.
Dude, and let me just say real quick about that. So I've got a bunch of your tools, and the most valuable part of them are the videos that you make explaining how to use them.
Good, I'm glad to hear that.
You walking through, because we buy these tools and we think, oh, it's just going to be an easy button to finishing. But there's a lot of nuance that goes into the coding and the thought that goes into the user experience, the thought that goes into the ease of use, right? And you do that really well. If I wasn't able to watch some of your videos, I would not have used those tools to their potential. So thank you for that.
Right.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to.
No, of course. I think that's important because I never want to push a button and something happens and here's 1,700 of them for $29.99. That's pointless. I need real tools that artists can use.
So, and we're speaking about since I'm here, the NBP retouch tools, right?
Right.
And there's a whole
Correct.
suite of them, and really, it's and not to sell your stuff for you, but the frequency separation changed things for me to make it really, really easy. Skin texture did really well. Your color grading one, like everything, all the styles, like it's just been really, really nice to get something that works, that has the ability to be changed and manipulated so that the artist can get what they want out of it.
Well, thank you.
And you walk through every single aspect of it. I just find it, you're doing it right is really what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that because that's how I imagine what I would want someone to do if I were on the customer end, right? Because I've watched many, many videos of different products, and I'm like, that's a cool product and a lousy explanation, or it's a really amazing explanation and an overinflated product, and everything in between. And so I try to find my balance. And like, for example, all summer long, I've been working on a color system, for
Yep.
lack of a better term. You can liken it to anybody else's color system, whether it's only the curious or whatever. There's a lot. I've been working on an action-based color system all summer, and I'm getting close. And that one's going to have to require probably a lengthy video explaining how it works, but it's supposed to give freedom and flexibility. So it can be simple or it can be advanced, and it can be detailed or it can be direct, and it can expand and grow with you. So one of the new philosophies is no more plugins. We pull panels. Plugins are not lightweight in development, and they're slow to update. And Adobe is a fucking moving target, and they're just like, "Hey, we're going to deprecate all of this now. Bye." And you're like,
Oops.
"Thanks," So there's cool things that I'm doing a semi actions, if done appropriately,
Yep.
are like a semi open source sort of. So I sell you an action because I work hard to make it useful. If you know what you're doing, you can change it, right? And I'd like it if you didn't give it to all your friends and let them buy it to support me, but I can't control that either. That's open source, right?
Right.
So effectively, actions are open source. So I thought, all right, so I have to embrace the open source philosophy when it comes to action. I've been doing it for years, but the new set is like, here you go. They're flexible. They're dynamic. They can do all kinds of cool stuff. If you change them to match what you're doing, cool. If Adobe changes something, I'll push out an update probably in a few days, and just it's an ever evolving thing. The actions will change. I mean, I've pushed out updates with my new actions probably 8 times in the last 2 months because something changes or I find a better way to do it. And anybody who bought it, I push it out to them. And it's like a community flow instead of buy this panel
Mm-hmm.
and then use it forever.
Mm-hmm.
No, we keep things flowing. And my problem has always been is making people who are newer to Photoshop or newer to retouching not intimidated because
Yeah.
I'm a huge nerd on it. And I'm trying to welcome them in. No, no, no. These tools are for you too. Don't worry about the
Right.
multi-band frequency separation. Don't worry about
Right.
that one. But
Right.
this other stuff you can find, you can benefit from. I promise.
And
That's what I'm trying to change up a little bit.
and speaking about actions, not only does it keep it more nimble for you on the code and development side, but it allows such it allows you to be so nimble with those updates, right? Because if Adobe does lose its mind and they start doing something completely different, now you can just tweak those little parts of the action. But the best part of that in learning your actions is to go back and kind of reverse engineer. What did you do? Oh, wow. Okay, I'd be doing this. So just be warned, right? And or you
Yep.
can make changes, or here's how you do, the action, the next step in the action. And I just love how you put in some of those tool tips or hints or whatever you want to call them, the point of no return, if you will. But I think, actions versus plugins, I would much rather do that and take that recipe and season it to taste than just have something that I have no idea how it works. I just press the button. I just feel like that's it doesn't
Right.
allow me to create what I want to create when I don't have that control, when I have to give up the control to something else. Maybe that's a personal thing
Right.
and it's just coming out of trauma, but I have to
No.
control that.
No, but I mean, my sort of creed, if you will, my sort of mantra moving forward with MVP is we create workflow tools. And so, are they production tools? I don't know. We talked about Boris effects earlier. That's a production tool, and that has to open up a third-party window and use a third-party processing module because it's doing things Photoshop does not do,
Right.
right? And in that regard, that's needed if you want to get what Boris effects can do. Yeah, there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of things Boris does you can do in Photoshop, but
Sure.
Photoshop Boris is a completely standalone thing that does stuff and then sends it back to Photoshop the way so many high-end plugins are. So to get those really kick-ass lighting effects, Boris, I mean, you know what I mean, or Oniric or something like that. That's what those tools exist for. But me, I want if you use whatever the hell you use, my tools can blend into that workflow in some way or be a part of it, as opposed to take you over here to this third party window to do all the stuff. And when you come back, it's done. No, let's keep things flexible so you can keep it dynamic. That's the philosophy, which makes things a lot harder, but whatever. I'd rather it be flexible than just push a button and something happens. That's one of the reasons why my color system has taken all summer because the idea I started with, the pencil sketch or the
Yep.
notes in the note file, what I started with back in like March, that idea is gone. It's completely evolved into something else, and I've rebuilt it 3 times because I'm like, oh wait, no, it's not flexible enough. Oh, but what about someone who already has this layer? What if somebody? Oh, wait a second. What about the bit depth? Okay, is that what about the color space? And there's so many questions, and all I'm trying to think about is flexibility in workflows, not buy this and do it my way. That's
Mhm.
what I'm focused on.
Wow. I've been continually impressed by what you put out, the thought that goes into it instead of the pump and dump sort of stuff that I see a lot with, oh, just buy my 16,000 prompts and everything will be great, right? And then next week it's like buy
Mm.
my 17,000 prompts and everything will be great. And you bring so much thought and energy and experience and into the workflow, right? Because you want to create a better hammer. You don't want to replace the act of hammering. You just want to make something that can work better for people if they decide to use a hammer. And
Mhm.
I love the fact that you're able to integrate those tools without diminishing or eliminating others that people might have in their workflow. But the important thing that I'm hearing is that you got to know what you want to do before you start throwing money at things or before you buy all these plugins or these tools. Learn a little bit about Photoshop. If the actions and plugins can make your workflow faster, which allows you to make more money, go for it. Absolutely, that's what they're there for. But if you're just doing it because you think it will create your art for you, it's not what these tools are for. So I think you come at it with such a pragmatic approach of what it is not, and where it fits, that I think people go into it wide open. It's why I had no problem being like, yes, spend, spend, spend. Because I do think like there's trust, there's experience, right? There's a whole bunch of shoots behind you to know what to do and what not to do. And I'm going to trust that more than someone that just has a good sale and I don't know exactly what they're selling, right? So reputation precedes you. All right, my friend.
Thank you. I really do try.
I think I've taken up far too much of your time tonight, and I appreciate that. I don't know what's going on down in Texas these days, but it's getting cold up here. So
we have allegedly our first cold snap at the end of this coming week, and I use that with big ass quotes because it was still 93 today.
Oh, fuck off. We'll be down in the 20s tonight for sure. And
hell no, we won't be in the 20s.
Oh,
but
God.
yeah, we're supposed to be in the upper 40s or lower 50s at the end of the week.
I'll start sending you down jackets and blankets just to make sure you guys are safe. All right, my friend. Thank you for doing this. I know I kind of surprised you with the live thing, but this was a ton of fun. I had a great time doing this. So anytime you want to come back, anytime, we'll just do this anytime you want. I'm happy to have you back. I love talking to you, and I love all the things that we just kind of wander into. So anytime you want to, you come on back, and we'll just kind of continue it. All right?
Well, I appreciate that. I would definitely love to be back, man. It's always good to talk.
All right, brother. I will talk to you soon. Take it easy.
Thank you, my friend. Take care.